The Black Widow hadn't touched a man in 15 years until she paid $1 for the muscular native man at the auction. Her hand trembled as it rose into the dusty air. The auctioneer's gavel hung suspended like a vulture over carrion. $1 for the Cherokee's labor contract. The crowd turned, faces twisted with confusion and something darker. Temperance Blackwood stood among them like a lone tree in a field of wheat. Her black dress caught no wind. Her spine held straight as iron. Going once. Marshal Briggs leaned forward from the back row. His eyes narrowed on her face. She felt his gaze like cold metal against her neck. Going twice. The Cherokee man stood on the platform in shackles. Muscle corded his arms despite months of poor treatment. His dark eyes found hers across the crowd. Pride lived there still. Pride in something else she recognized. The weight of being alone in a world that wanted you gone. Sold to Mrs. Blackwood for $1. The gavel cracked like breaking bone. Voices erupted around her. She walked forward through the noise. Each step carved deeper into ground she could never take back. Her fingers touched the paper. The pen felt foreign in her grip. 15 years since she had willingly made contact with any man. The ink dried black as her widow's weeds. The Cherokee's shackles clinked as he stepped down. Up close, she saw the faint lines around his eyes, saw the way his jaw set against whatever words he might speak. His presence filled the space between them like heat from a forge. "I don't know why I just did that," she whispered. He said nothing. The crowd pressed closer. "Black Widow bought herself a man," someone muttered. "3 husbands in the ground and now this. Unnatural is what it is." Temperance lifted her chin. Let them talk. She had survived worse than whispers. The Cherokee man studied her face as if reading tracks in sand. Whatever he found there made his expression shift. Not soften, but change. Marshal Briggs pushed through the dispersing crowd. His badge caught afternoon light like a warning. "Mrs. Blackwood, interesting purchase today. Legal purchase, Marshal." "Oh, I'm sure it is." His smile held no warmth. "Just surprised to see you taking such an interest in convicted criminals. Man like that could be dangerous to a woman living alone." The Cherokee's hands clenched despite the shackles. Temperance stepped between them. Small as she was, her presence carried weight. "I can handle my own affairs, Marshal." "Course you can. You've had plenty of practice." His eyes moved to the Cherokee man. "Just remember, any trouble from your new help and he goes straight back to territorial prison. Won't be another auction." Briggs tipped his hat and walked away. His boots left deep prints in the dust. Temperance looked up at the Cherokee man. Standing this close, she could smell leather and sage smoke clinging to his clothes. Could see the way his chest rose and fell with controlled breathing. "What's your name?" "Iana Stonecrow." The words came rough, like he hadn't spoken them in too long. "I'm Temperance Blackwood." "I know who you are." Of course he did. Everyone knew the Black Widow. 3 husbands dead, each one leaving her wealthier than the last. Each death just mysterious enough to keep the law sniffing around her property like dogs after a scent. The crowd had mostly scattered. Only a few stragglers remained to watch the peculiar tableau. A black woman and a Cherokee man bound together by $1, and whatever strange impulse had seized her heart. "Can you remove these shackles?" she asked the departing auctioneer. The man glanced nervously at Marshal Briggs's retreating form. "Yes, contract's legal. He's your responsibility now." The iron fell away from Ayana's wrists. He rubbed the raw skin there but made no other movement. No attempt to flee. No word of gratitude. "I have a ranch 10 miles north of here," Temperance said. "You can ride behind me or walk. Your choice. I am not property to be owned." The words cut through the afternoon heat. Several people turned to stare. Temperance felt their attention like needles in her skin. "No," she said quietly, "you're not." Something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of shared burdens carried alone too long. The kind of weight that bent backs and hardened hearts. "Then what am I?" Temperance looked at her hands, still trembling slightly from signing those papers, from breaking 15 years of careful distance. "I don't know yet." She walked toward her horse. After a moment, she heard his footsteps following. The sound echoed off the empty buildings around them. Each step carried them further from the safety of strangers and closer to whatever waited in the spaces between knowing and not knowing. Behind them, Marshal Briggs watched from the jailhouse window. His fingers drummed against the glass in a rhythm like rainfall on a coffin lid. The sun bled orange across Temperance's land when Ayanna Stonecrow disappeared into the desert. 3 days of tense silence had passed since the auction. 3 days of him sleeping in her barn and refusing every task she offered. On the fourth morning, his bedroll lay empty. Temperance saddled her mare in the pre-dawn darkness. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her chest felt hollow. 15 years of careful isolation, broken by one foolish dollar bid. Now even that small connection had vanished into the wasteland. She followed his tracks north across the hardpan. The ground told stories in boot prints and disturbed stones. He had not fled in panic. His path moved with purpose toward the rocky outcropping that marked her property's edge. The mare picked her way up the narrow trail. Mesquite thorns caught at Temperance's skirts. The air thinned as they climbed, carrying the scent of sage and something else. Something that made her skin prickle with recognition. She found him in a clearing among the stones. Ayanna knelt in the dust between weathered wooden crosses. His hands moved in patterns she did not understand. His lips shaped words in a language that sounded like wind through canyon walls. Temperance dismounted slowly. Her boots crunched on gravel despite her care. He did not look up. "This is a graveyard," she said. "Yes." The crosses stood in uneven rows, some bore names carved in Cherokee syllabary. Others held only dates. All carried the weight of lives cut short by forces beyond their control. "I didn't know." Ayanna's hands stilled. "White folks rarely know what lies beneath their feet." The words should have stung. Instead, they settled in her chest like truth too long avoided. She counted the graves. 23 crosses in ground she had owned for 8 years. "My grandfather is buried here. My grandmother. My sister's children who died on the journey west." His voice carried no accusation, just fact delivered with the weight of stone. "The railroad companies have been asking to buy this section," Temperance said. "Good money for worthless rock," they said. Now Ayanna looked at her. His dark eyes held depths she had not expected. "Worthless. That's what they called it." He rose to his feet. Dust fell from his knees. Around them the wind picked up, stirring the sage and setting the wooden crosses to creaking. "They want to run tracks through here, straight line to California. Over my people's bones." Temperance looked at the crosses again, saw them now for what they were. Not obstacles to progress, but markers of lives that had mattered. People who had loved and lost and died far from the homes they remembered. "I won't sell to them." The words left her mouth before thought could stop them. Ayanna's expression shifted. Not gratitude, something more complex. Why? She could not explain the feeling that had seized her at the auction. Could not name the force that had made her bid on a man instead of land. Could not justify the certainty that now filled her bones. Because some things shouldn't be disturbed. They stood in silence as the sun climbed higher. The cemetery felt older than the crosses suggested, as if the land itself remembered the weight of grief and chose to hold it sacred. "I'll work your land," Ayanna said finally. "Not for you, for them." He gestured toward the graves. Temperance nodded. Understanding passed between them without need for more words. They rode back toward the ranch house as clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind carried the promise of rain and the weight of agreements made in graveyards under watching eyes. Jake, her foreman, met them at the barn. His weathered face showed surprise at seeing them return together. "Mrs. Blackwood was wondering where you'd gotten to." Showing Mr. Stonecrow the property boundaries. Jake's gaze moved between them. Something calculating flickered behind his pale eyes. "That's so. Well, we got fencing needs doing on the south pasture, if your new hand is ready for real work." Ayanna swung down from behind her saddle. His movements held the fluid grace of someone comfortable in his own strength. "I'm ready." "Good. Sun's burning daylight." Jake walked away, but his shoulders held tension that had not been there before. Temperance watched him go with unease settling in her stomach. That evening, she found Ayanna tending her injured mare in the barn. His hands moved over the animal's strained leg with surprising gentleness. Herbs and roots lay spread on a clean cloth beside him. "Where did you learn healing?" "My grandmother, before they took us from our home." He worked a poultice into the mare's swollen joint. The horse stood calm under his touch. Animals sense things people missed. This one trusted him already. "The railroad men will come again," Temperance said. "Let them come." His confidence unsettled her. She had spent 15 years building walls between herself and the world. Now this man spoke of facing threats as if courage were simple as breathing. "You don't understand. They have ways of taking what they want." Ayanna looked up from his work. His gaze held her steady. "So do you." The words hung in the barn's dusty air. Outside, thunder rumbled closer. The first drops of rain began pattering against the roof. Temperance thought of her 3 dead husbands, of the whispers that followed her through town, of the marshal's suspicious eyes and the weight of secrets carried alone. "People say things about me. People say many things. Most are lies told by the living to make sense of the dead." He finished wrapping the mare's leg and gathered his herbs. When he passed close to her, she caught the scent of sage smoke and something else. Something that made her remember what it felt like to breathe without fear. "I've never been innocent of anything they've accused me of," she said to his retreating form. Ayanna paused in the barn doorway. Rain fell harder now, drumming against the earth with increasing force. "Neither have I." He walked into the storm without looking back. Temperance remained in the barn, listening to the rain wash the dust from her land, and feeling something shift in the foundation of her carefully constructed world. 3 weeks passed in careful distance. Ayanna worked the land with quiet efficiency. Temperance watched from her porch as he mended fences and tended livestock. They moved around each other in measured circles, neither closing the space nor drifting too far apart. The rhythm broke when her stallion went down. Thunder rolled across the pasture, his black coat slick with fever sweat. The animal's breath came in harsh gasps. His eyes showed too much white. Jake stood over the horse with his rifle ready. "Best put him down, Mrs. Blackwood. Whatever's got him is spreading fast." Temperance knelt beside Thunder's head. The stallion had carried her through 8 years of solitude, had never failed her when she needed to outrun gossip or grief. "No, ma'am, he's suffering." I said no. Ayanna appeared at her shoulder without sound. His presence changed the air pressure around them. Jake's grip tightened on his weapon. "Might want to keep your distance, Cherokee. Sick horses can turn mean." Ayanna ignored him. He crouched beside the stallion and placed his hands on the animal's neck. Thunder's breathing slowed under his touch. "Poison," Ayanna said quietly. "What kind of poison?" Temperance asked. His fingers probed along the horse's jaw, found something there that made his expression darken. "Oleander, mixed with grain." Jake shifted his weight. "How would you know a thing like that?" "My grandmother taught healing. Before white men decided Cherokee medicine was witchcraft." The words carried edges sharp enough to draw blood. Jake's face flushed red above his beard. "Maybe your Cherokee friend here knows about poison because he's the one using it." Temperance rose slowly. Her hand found the pistol at her hip. "That's enough, Jake." "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm just saying. Man with his knowledge could do a lot of damage. 3 husbands dead of mysterious causes, and now your best horse gets poisoned right after he arrives." The silence stretched taut as wire. Thunder's labored breathing was the only sound cutting through the tension. "If you're suggesting something, Jake, say it plain." Jake's eyes flicked between her face and her weapon. After a moment, he lowered his rifle. "Just think you should be careful who you trust." He walked away, his boots leaving deep prints in the mud. Temperance waited until he disappeared behind the barn before holstering her pistol. "Can you save him?" Ayanna was already mixing herbs in a leather pouch. His movements held the precision of long practice. "Maybe, if we work fast." They labored through the afternoon. Ayanna brewed teas from roots she could not name. Temperance held Thunder's head while he poured medicine down the animal's throat. The stallion fought them at first, then gradually submitted to their care. As evening fell, Thunder's breathing steadied. The fever broke. He lifted his head and whickered softly. "How did you know?" Temperance asked. "Smell, taste in the air around his mouth. Same plants that grew near the mission school where they sent Cherokee children." His hand stilled on the medicine pouch. Something dark crossed his features. "They used oleander to teach us lessons about stealing food. Small doses to make us sick, larger ones to make examples." Temperance felt cold settle in her bones despite the warm evening air. "How old were you?" "7 when they took me, 15 when I left." The numbers hung between them like stones thrown into still water. 8 years of childhood stolen. 8 years of lessons taught with poison and fear. "I'm sorry," Yana shrugged. "Past is past, but it taught me to recognize the signs." They sat in comfortable silence as night fell around them. Thunder dozed in the straw, his breathing deep and even. The crisis had passed, but something had shifted between them in its wake. "Jake thinks I killed my husbands," Temperance said finally. "Did you?" The question should have shocked her. Instead, it felt inevitable, as if all their careful circling had led to this moment of reckoning. "Not with my own hands." Yana's expression did not change. He continued mixing herbs with steady fingers. "But you know who did." "I know they died when it became convenient for them to die. I know I inherited their property. I know the law has never found enough evidence to charge me." She pulled her knees to her chest, made herself smaller in the growing darkness. "I also know I've never felt safe with a man before." The admission hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Yana sealed his medicine pouch and set it aside. "Safety is a luxury most of us never get to enjoy." "Is that why you were arrested? For fighting back?" "I was arrested for existing where white men didn't want me to exist." "Same crime your husbands committed against you, I suspect." Thunder stirred in the straw, lifted his head and looked at them both with clear eyes. The poison had left his system, but the memory of it would linger. "Someone wanted him dead," Temperance said. "Someone wants you to hurt. Same person, most likely." She thought of Jake's quick accusations, of Marshall Briggs watching from the auction crowd, of the pattern that had followed her through 3 marriages and 15 years of widowhood. "They're getting bolder." Yana rose and brushed straw from his clothes. In the lamplight, his face showed the weathered strength of someone who had survived worse than poison and come out whole. "Good, bold men make mistakes." He walked toward the barn door, then paused. "Your stallion will need watching tonight, in case whoever did this comes back to finish the job." "I'll stay with him." "So will I." The words were not a question. Temperance nodded and settled deeper into the straw. Having someone share the watch felt strange after so many years of standing guard alone. They took turns through the night. When she dozed, she woke to find Ayana sitting alert beside Thunder's stall. When he rested, she kept vigil over both man and beast. Near dawn, hoofbeats approached the ranch. Temperance woke instantly, her hand finding her pistol. Yana was already standing, a shadow in the gray light. Marshall Briggs rode into the yard with 2 deputies behind him. Their presence carried the weight of official business and unofficial threat. "Mrs. Blackwood, heard you had some trouble with your horse." Temperance stepped into the doorway. Behind her, Thunder snorted and pawed the ground, alive and strong despite someone's best efforts. "Nothing I couldn't handle, Marshall." "That's so." His gaze found Ayana standing in the shadows. "Funny how trouble seems to follow certain folks around." The accusation sat heavy in the morning air. But Thunder's recovery had given Temperance something she had not possessed in years. An ally who asked no questions and expected nothing in return. "Funny how quickly help can arrive when you really need it," she replied. Briggs touched his hat brim and rode away. But his eyes promised this conversation was far from over. Marshall Briggs came at dawn with iron shackles and fabricated charges. Temperance woke to the sound of horses in her yard and the cold click of metal on metal. "Ayana Stonecrow, you're under arrest for conspiracy to incite uprising among the Cherokee population." The words cut through the morning air sharp as winter wind. Temperance rushed from her house, still fastening her robe. 3 deputies flanked Briggs, their hands resting easy on their weapons. Ayanna stood beside the water trough. His shirt hung open from washing. Droplets caught the early light on his chest and arms. He made no move to run. "What uprising?" Temperance demanded. "Been reports of Cherokee gathering weapons, planning attacks on white settlements. Your boy here was seen meeting with known agitators." "That's impossible." Briggs smiled without warmth. "Is it? Man like that carries violence in his blood, natural as breathing." The shackles closed around Ayanna's wrists with familiar finality. He met Temperance's eyes across the yard. Something passed between them in that look: understanding, acceptance, the bitter knowledge that this moment had always been coming. "Mrs. Blackwood had nothing to do with any of this," Ayanna said quietly. "We'll see about that." They loaded him into the wagon like cargo. Temperance followed on foot as they rolled toward town. Her bare feet found every stone and thorn in the path, but she felt none of it. The jail sat squat and windowless in the center of Tombstone. Iron bars and thick adobe walls that had swallowed countless men and returned few. Temperance paced outside while they processed the paperwork. Jake appeared at her elbow like smoke from a dying fire. "Terrible thing, Mrs. Blackwood, though I can't say I'm surprised." She turned to face her foreman. Something in his expression made her skin crawl. "What do you mean?" "Well, Cherokee are known for their violent tendencies, and you taking him in like you did, treating him almost like family, bound to give him ideas above his station." The words carried venom wrapped in false concern. Temperance studied Jake's weathered face and saw satisfaction lurking beneath the sympathy. "You reported him to Briggs." "Had to think of your safety, ma'am, and the safety of decent folk in town." Her hand found the pistol at her hip. Jake noticed the movement and took a step back. "Careful now, Mrs. Blackwood. Lot of people watching. Wouldn't want to do something you'd regret." She left him standing in the street and walked into the marshal's office. Briggs sat behind his desk shuffling papers with practiced indifference. "I want to see the prisoner." "Afraid that's not possible. Man's dangerous. Orders are no visitors." "On whose authority?" "Territorial governor." Signed order came in this morning. The lie sat between them thick as summer dust. Temperance had spent 15 years learning to read the faces of men who meant her harm. Briggs wore his intentions obvious as a brand. "How much will it take?" Briggs leaned back in his chair. His smile spread slow and cold. "This ain't about money, Mrs. Blackwood. This is about justice, about protecting decent citizens from savage influences. Ayanna Stonecrow never hurt anyone. Maybe not yet. But prevention is worth more than punishment, don't you think?" She left the office before she did something that would land her in the cell beside him. Outside, the town buzzed with whispered conversations that died when she passed. Windows held watching faces that turned away when she looked back. That evening she returned with her lawyer and a bag of gold coins. The lawyer was a thin man named Morrison who owed his practice to her late husband's connections. He wore expensive suits and nervous expressions in equal measure. "I'm afraid the situation is complicated, Mrs. Blackwood." "Uncomplicated." "The charges are federal. I'd need to file appeals in territorial court. Could take months." "I don't have months." Morrison shifted in his chair. His pale hands fluttered over his papers without settling. "There might be another way, if someone of sufficient standing vouched for his character, posted bond, took personal responsibility for his behavior." "How much?" $500, plus you'd have to guarantee his appearance for trial. $500 would drain her reserves, would leave her vulnerable if the railroad men pressed their offers. But the alternative was watching Ayanna rot in Briggs's jail while fabricated evidence built around him. "Do it." The paperwork took 2 hours. Morrison's pen scratched across forms with the persistence of hungry mice. Temperance signed her name to guarantees that could destroy everything she had built. When the cell door opened, Ayanna stepped out blinking in the lamplight. Dark bruises marked his wrists where the shackles had bitten deep. His shirt hung torn from rough handling. "Why?" he asked simply. The question carried weight beyond its single syllable. "Why risk her fortune?" Why expose herself to more scrutiny? Why choose his freedom over her safety? Because they want you to disappear. They walked from the jail into the cool night air. Behind them, Marshal Briggs watched from his office window. His expression promised this victory would be temporary. "You know this changes nothing," Ayanna said. "They'll come again with more charges, more evidence. Let them come." The words surprised her with their certainty. For 15 years she had survived by avoiding confrontation, by staying small and quiet and untouchable. Now she felt something different stirring in her chest, the desire to fight back. They rode toward her ranch in comfortable silence. The stars wheeled overhead in patterns older than human law. The desert night wrapped around them with familiar embrace. "In jail, I heard them talking," Ayanna said finally. "Briggs and his deputies. Briggs and Jake. Your foreman has been reporting to the marshal for months. Everything you do, everyone you see, they're building a case." The words hit her like cold water. Jake had worked her land for 3 years, had eaten at her table, had professed loyalty while selling her secrets for silver. What kind of case? Murder. They think if they can prove you killed your husbands, they can seize your property, claim it as evidence. Temperance thought of her 3 dead husbands, of the convenient timing of their deaths, of the wealth that had accumulated with each funeral. "They're not wrong about the murders." Gianna reined his horse closer to hers. In the moonlight his face showed no judgment, no fear, only acceptance of truths too dangerous for daylight. "But they're wrong about who did the killing." The admission hung between them like a bridge across dark water. Once crossed, there would be no going back to safe shores. "Yes," he nodded slowly. Understanding settled between them with the weight of shared secrets. "Then we'd better make sure they never prove it." They rode the rest of the way home planning strategy in whispered words. Behind them, the lights of town faded into memory. Ahead lay her ranch and the Cherokee graves and the promise of battles still to come. In his office, Marshal Briggs opened a bottle of whiskey and poured 3 glasses. Jake knocked on the door precisely at midnight. "She posted bail," Briggs said without preamble. "Figured she would. Woman's got feelings for that Cherokee, dangerous feelings." The third man stepped from the shadows. His face bore the soft features of too much easy living and too little honest work. "Then we accelerate the timeline, make her choose between love and survival." Jake lifted his glass in mock salute. "To the Black Widow's final mistake." The whiskey burned their throats. Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of sage and approaching storms. The Cherokee came like shadows moving across moonlit ground. Temperance woke to the sound of horses and voices speaking in languages that predated territorial law. She dressed quickly and stepped onto her porch. 15 riders sat their mounts in her yard. Their faces carried the weathered dignity of people who had survived forced marches and broken treaties. An older man with silver braids dismounted and approached her steps. "I am Joseph Blackbear. We come for Ayanna Stonecrow." The barn door opened. Ayanna emerged carrying his few possessions in a worn leather bag. He had been expecting them. "My people need to move north before winter," he said to Temperance. "The territorial militia is forcing all Cherokee onto reservations. Those who resist disappear." She watched him secure his belongings behind Joseph's saddle. His movements held the careful precision of someone preparing to leave forever. "How long before you have to decide?" "Dawn." The single word carried the weight of impossible choices. Stay and face certain imprisonment. Leave and abandon the woman who had paid $1 for his freedom. Then you should go. Ayanna turned to face her. In the lamplight spilling from her windows, she saw something she had never expected to find in any man's eyes. The same hollow ache that lived in her own chest. "I don't want to." The admission hung between them raw as an open wound. 15 years of careful distance crumbled with those 4 words. "But you will, because your people need you alive more than I need you here." Joseph Blackbear watched their exchange with the patient understanding of someone who had seen too many partings. His weathered hands held the reins steady while time stretched thin as morning mist. "There is another choice," Joseph said quietly. "She could come with us." Both Temperance and Ayanna stared at him. The old Cherokee's expression revealed nothing beyond calm acceptance of possibility. The mountains of Montana are far from territorial marshals, far from railroad men. A woman with your resources could help our people build something lasting. Temperance thought of her ranch, her cattle, the graves of 3 husbands buried beneath headstones that marked convenient deaths. Everything she had built through calculation and careful violence. "I can't." "Why?" The question came from Ayanna. His dark eyes held no judgment, only genuine curiosity about the chains that bound her to this place. "Because running never solves anything. It just moves the problem to new ground." A rider approached from the direction of town. Jake spurred his horse hard across the hardpan. Behind him, dust clouds marked the progress of more horses moving fast in the darkness. "Mrs. Blackwood," Jake called as he reined up. "Marshal Briggs is coming with a federal warrant. Someone told him about your Cherokee friends gathering here." The words carried false urgency wrapped around real threat. Jake's eyes moved over the assembled riders with satisfaction barely concealed. "How much time do we have?" Joseph asked. "Maybe an hour. Depends how fast they can rouse the deputies." Temperance studied her foreman's flushed face, saw the gleam of silver coins reflected in his calculating gaze. "Funny how you happen to be out riding so late, Jake. Just keeping watch over your interests, ma'am, like always." Yana stepped forward. His hand rested easy on the knife at his belt. "Like when you reported my movements to Briggs." Jake's horse sidled nervously under his tightening grip. The animal sensed violence brewing in the night air. "I don't know what you mean." "Like when you poisoned Mrs. Blackwood's stallion to frame me. That's crazy talk." Joseph Blackbear dismounted and walked to Jake's horse. His movement carried the fluid grace of someone comfortable with danger. "Crazy talk is what white men call Cherokee truth, but horses know liars. Your mount is afraid of you." Jake's hand moved toward his pistol. The Cherokee riders shifted in their saddles with predatory focus. 15 men who had learned to fight or die. "Now hold on, I came here to help." "No," Temperance said quietly. "You came here to finish what Briggs started." She pulled the papers from her coat pocket. Legal documents Morrison had prepared in case this moment arrived. Jake's face went pale as moonlight. "These are sworn statements from Dr. Williams about plant matter found in my husband's bodies. Oleander, Jimson weed, plants that grow wild around your cabin, Jake." The foreman's horse danced sideways. Its eyes rolled white with inherited fear. "You can't prove nothing." "Can't I? Yana taught me to recognize the smell of oleander, same smell that clings to your hands when you handle my horses." Jake jerked his reins hard. His mount reared and fought the cruel pressure on its mouth. "You murdered 3 innocent men," Temperance continued. "Made me look guilty while you got paid by Marshal Briggs to frame me for your crimes. They weren't innocent. They beat you, stole from you. I was protecting you." The confession spilled from his lips like poison from a broken bottle. Years of secret justification finally released into the night air. "By making me live with suspicion. By letting people call me the Black Widow while you counted your blood money." Jake's horse bolted. He fought to control the animal as it carried him in panic circles around the yard. The Cherokee riders closed ranks, blocking his escape routes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Jake shouted over the thunder of hooves. "Briggs said we'd run you out of town, take the land quiet. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. 3 men are dead because of your greed. 3 men who had it coming." Joseph Blackbear caught Jake's reins and brought the frightened horse to a standstill. His weathered face showed no mercy for the man who had murdered innocents and blamed others. "What happens to liars among your people?" he asked Temperance. She looked at Jake's sweating face, saw the same cruel satisfaction that had lived in her husband's eyes before death claimed them, saw the pattern that would continue until someone broke it with decisive action. They faced territorial justice, legal trials, years of appeals while they poisoned more wells. Dust clouds approached from the south, Marshal Briggs and his deputies riding hard toward a confrontation that would end with Cherokee blood on the ground. Unless they disappear first, Yana said quietly. Jake's eyes widened with sudden understanding. His horse trembled beneath him as if sensing its rider's fate. You can't. I'm a white man. There'll be consequences. Like the consequences my people faced for existing where you wanted our land, Joseph asked. The sound of approaching horses grew louder. Time narrowed to a blade's edge between choices that would define who lived and who vanished into desert darkness. Temperance looked at Ayana, saw her own reflection in his steady gaze. Two people who had survived by learning when mercy was luxury they could not afford. Take him with you, she said to Joseph. Let the mountains decide his punishment. Jake tried to spur his horse away. The animal refused to move under the Cherokee rider's watchful eyes. Mrs. Blackwood, please, I was trying to help you. Everything I did was for your benefit. No, everything you did was to steal what I built. Joseph nodded to his riders. They closed around Jake with the silence of hunting wolves. His protests faded as they led him away from the lights of civilization and into the vast darkness that swallowed men who chose greed over decency. Yana remained behind as the others vanished into the night. Marshal Briggs would arrive to find empty ground and questions with no comfortable answers. They'll blame you for Jake's disappearance. Let them try to prove it. He smiled at her fierce certainty. In the distance, hoofbeats faded until only desert silence remained. I'm staying. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. Staying meant facing whatever charges Briggs would fabricate. Staying meant choosing her over the safety his people offered. They'll destroy you for loving me. Then we'll be destroyed together. She reached for his hand, felt the callous strength of his fingers intertwining with hers. 15 years of careful isolation ended with that simple touch. Marshal Briggs would come seeking Jake and find only two people who had learned to stop running from the consequences of other men's violence. Marshal Briggs arrived with the dawn in a wagon full of armed men. Temperance waited on her porch with Ayana beside her. The coffee in her cup had grown cold hours ago, but her hands remained steady. Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Stonecrow, Briggs dismounted with theatrical precision. We're looking for your foreman Jake Morrison. Seems he never made it home last night. Jake quit, Temperance said simply. Quit did he? Funny time to leave his job. Middle of the night with no notice. Briggs walked a slow circle around the yard. His boots left deep prints in the dust where Cherokee horses had stood hours earlier. He studied the ground with practiced attention. Had some visitors, I see. Large group, Indians by the look of the tracks. My land, my guests. Federal law says otherwise. Harboring fugitive Indians is a crime, Mrs. Blackwood. Ayana rose from his chair. His movement carried the fluid readiness of a man comfortable with violence. I'm no fugitive. You released me on bond. That was before you helped a band of renegade Cherokee escape territorial custody. Briggs pulled papers from his coat. Official seals caught the morning light with cold authority. I have warrants here for both your arrests, conspiracy, harboring fugitives, accessory to kidnapping. Kidnapping? Jake Morrison was taken against his will. We have witnesses who saw him ride out here last night. He hasn't been seen since. Temperance set down her coffee cup. The sound rang sharp as a judge's gavel in the morning air. What witnesses? A man stepped from behind the wagon. Soft features and expensive clothes marked him as someone who profited from other people's misery. His smile held the satisfaction of a successful predator. I am Thomas Whitmore, territorial prosecutor. I witnessed Mr. Morrison's departure from town. He was clearly distressed about some threat to your safety, Mrs. Blackwood. The lie sat between them thick as summer heat. Whitmore's pale hands fluttered over his papers with practiced efficiency. I also have testimony from townspeople about your unnatural relationship with the Cherokee prisoner, about strange activities on your property, about the suspicious deaths of 3 husbands under circumstances that benefit you considerably. Temperance felt the trap closing around them. Months of careful planning reduced to this moment of reckoning. You want my land. We want justice. Your property will be held as evidence pending trial, standard procedure in capital cases. Jana's hand found hers. His fingers intertwined with hers in silent solidarity against the forces arrayed before them. Then you'll need more than fabricated testimony and convenient witnesses. Temperance reached into her coat. The papers Morrison had prepared rustled in the morning breeze. These are sworn statements from Dr. Williams. Analysis of plant matter found in my husband's bodies. Oleander, Jimson weed. Specific varieties that grow only in certain soil conditions. Briggs frowned at the documents. His confidence wavered as he read the detailed botanical analysis. This proves nothing except they were poisoned. We already suspected that. Read the next page. Whitmore snatched the papers from Briggs. His face went pale as desert bone. Soil samples from Jake Morrison's cabin, same mineral content, same plant varieties. Jake had access to the specific poisons that killed my husbands. That's circumstantial evidence at best. Temperance smiled without warmth. Keep reading. The third page contained Jake's full confession, written in his own hand, signed and witnessed by Joseph Blackbear before Cherokee justice claimed its due. Jake Morrison murdered 3 innocent men on your orders, Marshal. Made me the scapegoat while you built a case to seize valuable land through legal manipulation. Briggs grabbed for his pistol. Jana was faster. The marshal's weapon flew from his grip and landed in the dust. The deputies reached for their rifles and found Cherokee arrows pointed at their hearts. Joseph Blackbear emerged from behind the barn with 15 silent warriors. They had never left, had waited in the shadows for this final confrontation. We return what belongs to the desert, Joseph said quietly. Whitmore fell to his knees in the dust, his expensive suit torn by cactus thorns and bitter truth. You can't do this. We're federal officials. You're murderers and thieves. The desert knows the difference. Temperance looked at the men who had orchestrated years of suffering, saw the same cruel satisfaction in their eyes that had lived in her husband's faces before justice found them. Jake confessed to everything, the poisonings, the bribes, your plan to frame me and steal my property, all written down in legal language your own courts will understand. She handed the final document to a terrified deputy. Take this to the territorial governor. Tell him what happens when federal marshals become common criminals. Briggs struggled against the Cherokee warriors holding his arms, his face twisted with impotent rage. This isn't over. There'll be consequences. They'll send the cavalry. Let them come, Joseph said. The mountains are deep. Justice runs deeper. The Cherokee led their captives away into the desert vastness. Their voices faded until only wind remained to carry the promise of accountability to those who profited from others' pain. Temperance and Ayana stood alone in the sudden quiet. Around them, her land stretched toward distant mountains painted gold by morning sun. They'll send replacements, Ayana said. More marshals, more prosecutors. Then we'll face them together. He turned her hand palm up, traced the lines there with gentle fingers. 15 years of isolation ended in that simple touch. Are you sure? The scandal alone could destroy everything you've built. I built it alone. Living it alone nearly killed me. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. Acknowledgement of vulnerability, acceptance of risk, the choice to build something beautiful from the ruins of careful survival. 1 year later, Cherokee families worked the northern pastures of Temperance Blackwood's expanded ranch. Children played among the sacred graves their grandparents had been forced to abandon. Elders taught traditional ways while learning new methods of raising cattle and growing corn. Temperance and Ayana stood together watching the sunset paint the desert gold. Her hand rested in his without reservation. The Black Widow had become something richer than reputation allowed. A woman who had learned that touching another person was not surrender, but the truest form of strength. The territorial governor had appointed a new marshal, a fair man who investigated crimes rather than manufacturing them. The railroad companies had moved their plans further south. Some things remained too sacred for progress to disturb. Sometimes the best things in life cost only $1, Temperance said quietly, if you're brave enough to pay the real price. Yana squeezed her hand. Around them, the desert wind carried the voices of children learning songs in 2 languages, the sound of healing taking root in ground watered by tears and tended by hope. They had paid the real price, had chosen love over safety, and found something worth defending in the space between heartbeats. The sacred graves watched over them with silent approval. The past and future joined in the eternal present of 2 people who had learned to trust again. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.